Welcome to the College of Education 10-Minute Research Break, a podcast devoted to highlighting research by Illinois State University's College of Education, faculty, staff, and students. So grab a cup of coffee, get comfortable, and take a break with us.
Hi, I'm Tricia Class. Today I'm talking with Carolyn Hunt, doctoral student in the School of Teaching and Learning. The article that we will discuss today focuses on the experiences and perceptions of literacy coaches who work in the schools. Welcome, Carolyn. Thank you for talking with me.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Your article notes that literacy coaching is a new development in the profession. Could you explain what literacy coaches are and what the literature says about them?
Sure. A literacy coach is a professional who provides embedded professional development for teachers in the schools. So a literacy coach does things like model for teachers, co-plan with teachers in an effort to improve literacy instruction in schools. A lot of the research on literacy coaching has focused on what they do. What are their tasks? And they've found that they do lots of different things depending on where they are. They might work primarily with teachers. They might also work with students. They might be heavily involved in professional development. They may have a large role in assessment and dealing with RTI data. It really varies from school to school. So one line of research has dealt with that, just what do coaches do? Another line of research has to do with literacy coaches' roles. That deals with who they are in relation to other people's expectations. So some people may expect a literacy coach to be a collaborator or a co-planner. Others may expect them to be more of a leader or a professional developer, and that also varies from context to context. And then some research talks about those contextual factors. How is literacy coaching different in, say, a primary school versus a middle school? What contextual factors like principal leadership style or the culture of the school, how do those things contribute to what a literacy coach does and how they fulfill their roles? A more recent line of research, which is what I've based most of my research on, is looking into the identities of literacy coaches. So as a literacy coach moves through institutional spaces in a school and works with different people, they enact different situated identities. Who they are with different people in different places throughout the building can shift. And this line of research points to the complexities of literacy coaching. So that's what I've looked at in my research, is how do coaches negotiate what their roles are and what it is they are supposed to do.
And how you answered that research question was by conducting a qualitative research study using Desserteau's theory. Could you explain how this theory helped fill in the gap in this literature and how it helped you frame your own study?
Yes. I wanted to complicate the notion of role in order to look at those shifting multiple identities that coaches can have. And Desserteau's theory was helpful with that for a variety of reasons, but one of his main concepts is discussing the difference between strategies and tactics. So he conceptualizes strategies as something that is institutional, that is used to control what people are doing. And tactics are the negotiations people make on the ground, the little things that they do, the microdiscursive moves that they make in order to position themselves in relation to those institutional spaces. So when I'm thinking of literacy coaching, I can see roles as similar to strategies in that they're fixed and decontextualized often. And then what we're doing in our study is looking more at the tactics. What are coaches doing tactically? What discursive moves are they making to negotiate who they communicate that they are, who they think they are, who other people think they are, and how institutional spaces are used and how professional learning occurs.
Could you share some major findings about what the literacy coaches actually experienced, their issues of identity, power, and positioning as literacy coaches?
Yes. There were two major discourses sort of floating around in the community, and they were somewhat conflicting with each other. These were literacy coaches who were in their first year as literacy coaches and were also receiving professional development to be literacy coaches at the same time. So within their professional development, there was a discourse of the importance of building supportive relationships with teachers. This is the discourse that got talked about the most. But at the same time, the coaches all felt a pressure to demonstrate their expertise, to prove that they were qualified for the position. They, in different ways, repositioned themselves in relationship to those discourses. So some teachers resisted the expert role and tried instead to reposition themselves as collaborators with teachers by focusing on, we instead of the I. Others really wanted to be able to position themselves as an expert to show that they were qualified for the position, but they faced difficulty in positioning themselves that way due to contextual factors within the building. This caused a lot of frustration and anxiety for the coaches as they were trying to make sense of who they were in relation to these two conflicting discourses. They wanted to be supportive and be collaborative, but they also wanted to show that they had expertise in literacy. And we saw them using emotions in a tactical way. So their emotions were ways for them to resist being an expert, being seen as solely an expert, or ways of aligning themselves more with collaborative practices. Even though I didn't go into the study looking to find out about emotions, it came up as a way that coaches were defining themselves and repositioning themselves and defining the discourses around them and responding to those discourses. And then also, I think that previous research might have shared these two discourses, collaborator and expert, as separate roles and just tried to explain, well, what is a collaborator and what is an expert? But the coaches really knew what a collaborator was and what an expert was. What they needed was to be able to place themselves within those discourses and be able to negotiate between and within those discourses rather than just learn how to enact a role.
You have some practical implications of how to help literacy coaches to actually address this issue you're talking about.
I think that we need a more nuanced understanding of role for literacy coaches. One of the things that coaches have talked about in previous research and in my study as well is frustration about not knowing what their roles are supposed to be and people not understanding what it is they're supposed to do in their buildings. That is warranted, but I don't think we can stop at role. We also have to understand the complexities of enacting those roles, and that you can't just put on a role like you put on a mask, but that you really have to get in there and negotiate with teachers what professional learning means and who gets to be in the classroom, where does learning occur, all those sorts of big questions that coaches deal with every day. And I think in order to be able to navigate those negotiations successfully, they need extensive professional development and support. And that professional development and support needs to include attention to issues of identity, positioning, and power, and it needs to include emotions and recognize the emotional aspect of literacy coaches' work. Another thing that I would like to try is seeing if having literacy coaches engage in microanalysis themselves and look very closely at the way that they position themselves and position others in their interactions with teachers could be very beneficial for them. And so that's something that I'm trying in my current research.
I just want to thank you for talking about this article, and I wish you good luck in your future research because I realize it's your dissertation. Great. So thank you so much for today's conversation.
Great. Thanks for talking with me.
Thank you. The full citation for this article is Hunt and Hansfield, 2013, The Emotional Landscapes of Literacy Coaching, Issues of Identity, Power, and Positioning. Journal of Literacy Research, Volume 45, Number 1, pages 1 through 30. The citation can also be found at the website coe.ilstu.edu/research/podcast. Join us for future Research Break podcasts.
This podcast is sponsored by Illinois State University's College of Education, where we strive to assure that all students realize the democratic ideal through our teaching, research, and service to the field of education.